PR thing isn't working out. And we're thinking of imposing a sort of fascistic dictatorship on the United States to rescue it from the Great Depression. Are you in? And as I was reading, I said, wow, this is right out of a 9/11 conspiracy theorist fantasy that took place in 1934 instead of 2001. And what do you think Smedley Butler did? Smedley Butler went to the media. He had a friend who worked at a Philadelphia newspaper. He said, these creeps are trying to bribe me to create a coup. The story went out. It became the subject of congressional investigation. Everybody involved was disgraced. And that is how things work in an open society, when people come to you and say, hey, let's stage a coup and create a fascistic government. And this is back in the age when fascism still had a good name. Mussolini, back in 1934, was a figure of respect in the United States. Now, fast forward to 9/11, fast forward to 2001, and imagine if you repeated that exercise 100 times, because that's what you need to do. If you want to blow up the World Trade Center, you can't do it with one guy. You need 100 Smedley Butlers. You go to 100 Smedley Butlers and say, hey, what do you say? We're going to create a fascistic corporate oligarchy in the United States, but first we have to blow up a few office buildings. Are you in? How many of those people do you think wouldn't run, who knows, FBI, CIA, the media, some guy like me? They run somewhere. Nowadays, they open a Twitter account. You need that in an open society to keep this kind of dark conspiracy under wraps for phosphorus, which is one of the reasons that I'm so skeptical of conspiracy theories. Now, the larger question is, why does this stuff matter? A lot of people who agree with me, even those people are going to say, why do you write a book about this stuff? Let these people have their fun. That's about stuff. It's internet stuff. I don't think it's just internet stuff. I think a democracy becomes ungovernable if a substantial portion of the population lives in an alternative reality. And I'm not just talking about alternative opinions. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. Everyone in this room has different opinions. But when you live in an alternative factual reality, a reality where Barack Obama is born in Kenya and is actually a Muslim seeking to impose Sharia in the United States, or the New World Order is secretly plotting to put us all in concentration camps, or 9/11 was an inside job, when you live in that kind of alternative reality, it's impossible to have any kind of democratic consensus because people can't even agree on basic facts. How are we supposed to have an argument about America's security needs with someone who believes that 9/11 was an inside job? How are we supposed to have an argument about Obamacare with someone who thinks that Obama is a secret agent for Iran? It becomes impossible. And so this isn't just about X-Files fantasies. This is about the political future of America and making sure that intelligent people can agree on certain basic facts about some of the most important things in American history. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you.
That was pretty short, I know.
Oh, it's okay. Yeah. Right.
Dr. Tarpley is, I understand, going to speak with a video presentation, so that's going to mean that all of us have to, that's why we're not sitting on the stands. We won't be able to see over our heads. I thank John for his remarks, and I'd like to now invite Mr. Tarpley to come up and present his version of reality.
Yeah! Let's do it!
Thank you very much. I wonder if I could be awarded the 5 minutes left over from the previous. No conspiracy involved. All right. So here's my answers to Jonathan Kay. I can't respond to everything, but we have to think back to the tremendous abuse of the 9/11 myth, as I would call it. You can remember when in the Bush White House, the answer to everything was 9/11. Why is there a deficit? 9/11. What about the environment? 9/11. Ali, the answer was 9/11. Do you have a follow-up? The Giuliani for President campaign. Verb, noun, 9/11. And that was an attempt to take over the United States government. I think we have to be alert to the danger of neo-McCarthyite thinking, the demonization or the witch hunt for dissidents, which can, of course, under certain circumstances, take the extreme form of the Soviet method, which was to put dissidents in wards for the mentally ill. The big question is, where is reality, and whose mind is actually fleeing from reality? Is posed. Now, the reality that I work on is, in particular right now, war avoidance. This was a demonstration 5 years ago. Some people here, I think, were part of it. We were at the White House. Beware another fake 9/11 designed to nuke Iran, because this is the reality of our times, and we've been through it enough so that it shouldn't surprise us. Now, I have some points of agreement with Mr. Kay. I have a low opinion of postmodernism, deconstructionism, Derrida. I actually discuss Derrida in my book. I discuss Derrida, Habermas, and Richard Rorty, the three main philosophical schools of the present age, and find them all wise, although for different reasons. I would also share his diagnosis of Michael Ruppert, without wanting to go into any details. I'm happy to leave David Icke among the lizards. I share his scorn for Rush Limbaugh, although I would point out that there is some evidence that William Buckley of the National Review was present at the creation for Limbaugh. My version of history is not that of Noam Chomsky and Howard Zinn. Howard Zinn, because he hated civilization as such. Noam Chomsky, because he was the most implacable enemy of 9/11 truth. I also have a low opinion of Adbusters. This is the group that has sabotaged the Occupy movement from within and deprived it of a lot of its potential. Now, points of disagreement are, of course, numerous. The goal of history, or historiography, as I practice it, is not to find conspiracies at all costs. It is to tell what actually happened, whether there was a conspiracy or not. Anyone who says that there's nothing in the world but conspiracies, that everything's a conspiracy, that the world economic depression of our time is a conspiracy, and that's all, that's paranoia. I would agree. However, we have to look at objective reality. It is economic, military, and political. And within that reality, or on that bedrock of reality, conspiracies indeed may arise. If we think of the typology of tyranny, oligarchy, and the mob, autocracy, we can see that the tyrant, the Stalin, or Hitler at the height of his power, doesn't need a conspiracy. He can do what he wants. He gives orders, things happen. The purely spontaneous mob is also not a conspiracy. It's sort of a free-for-all. But in that broad area in the middle, in an oligarchical situation, and that is the situation of the society that we live in, especially in the Anglo-American world, that's where conspiracies can flourish. Now, Mr. Kay's book has the disadvantage of being preoccupied. We now live in the post-Occupy world, and the notion of 1% oppressing the 99%, or as I would say, the oligarchy oppressing the people, is now, I think, a mainstream concept. And there's a real change in the spirit of the age. I would also note Machiavelli in his discourses. He says that the violent clash of the patricians and the plebs, made possible by the tribunes of the people, was a strength of the Roman Republic. That the clash of ideas is indeed the vigor of a democracy. And I would invite Mr. Kay to rethink his opposition to the scholarship for Joshua Blankney. If we can't have, if in our political system, we don't have a countervailing force that can say no to the hegemonic views, then maybe the academy can provide that, and I think that's what Blankney is trying to do. Now, my start with this goes back to 1978. I was invited by a former member of the Italian government, former and future, to write a book about the Moro assassination, who killed Moro, my finding, NATO intelligence, I think, borne out in the meantime. Mr. Kay also points out that I'm one of the few people who's still interested in the attempt to kill President Reagan. This is the headline from the Houston Post back in March, 31 years ago now. Reagan wounded. And this part, I'm afraid, Mr. Kay can try to leave out. Bush's son was to dine tonight with shooting suspect's brother. Not George W. Bush, but Neil Bush, Silverado Neil Bush, was going to have dinner with Scott Hinckley, the elder brother of the would-be killer of the president. Bush's office confirmed this. Vice President confirms his son was to have hosted Hinckley's brother, and indeed, Neil Bush conceded they were going to meet. What does this mean? It's hard to tell, but that is certainly the appearance of a conflict of interest. When the father is going to be President of the United States. How is it that in the government of laws, right, with all our journalist watchdogs on duty, it didn't become a huge scandal? Where's the grand jury? Where's this commission of inquiry? Now, Mr. Kay talks about conspiracy. I still find his notion of conspiracy elusive. He says the Tea Party is not a straightforward conspiracist movement, but it's mainstream because 71% of Republicans have a positive view of it. I think if you got 71% of Republicans, that's when you're really on dangerous ground. He also says the Hindu caste system is enforced by a real conspiracy of high caste elites. Oh my heavens! What will the Hindus say? Another problem with journalism, what we see here, right, the famous BBC, ahead of the news, right, not even abreast of the news, but ahead of the news. This is Building 7 over here. It's 9/11, of course. Here's Building 7, and she's telling you that this building, the 47-story Salomon Brothers building, has collapsed. The poor lady doesn't see that that's the building there behind her. That is Building 7, and it hasn't collapsed. And she's gotten 23 minutes ahead of the news, if you can still see that. This is why people say that journalists are simply servants of those in power. Now, of course, the attack on conspiracy theories started very early. G.W. Bush went to the United Nations to say we must never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories. Let's take a different view. In the history of conspiracy theory that Mr. Kay traces, he leaves out a couple of the most important episodes. The two American revolutions we've had, the American Revolution and the Civil War, which was a revolution on steroids. The Ideological Origins of the American Revolution, distinguished 1967 book by Professor Barnard Bailey of Harvard University. He won the Bancroft Prize in American history. He said that the unifying feature of the entire generation that waged the American Revolution was the notion of a British conspiracy to enslave the colonies. That is what they had in common. It started with Edmund Burke, of all people. George Washington, as you can see, talks about deliberation. Thomas Jefferson, maybe your cup of tea, not mine, but he talks about a plan of reducing us to slavery. You'll hear it in the Declaration of Independence. John Adams relied on to be quite outspoken. The conspiracy came in 1763 or 1764. It was secret, dark, and deep. It was a Junto conspiracy, says John Adams. The Boston Committee of Correspondence thanks God for helping them to discover the plot. For them, obviously, God is a conspiracy theorist. The Declaration of Independence adumbrates, don't look now, a conspiracy theory. A long chain of abuses he has, evinces a design to reduce the colonies to absolute despotism. And now my personal favorite, Abraham Lincoln, known in his time as Spotty Lincoln, because of the spot resolutions. The Polk regime said that the Mexicans had attacked the U.S. on U.S. territory. He repeatedly asked, where's the spot? Show me where. I want to know where. In other words, he refused to accept the official version of the conspiracy theory, which was being used for the main war of his time. You can see that book by Glenn Price, Lincoln as a conspiracy theorist. But it doesn't stop there. The most famous speech of American history in the 19th century is the House Divided speech. And he talks about Stephen Douglas, Franklin Pierce, Roger Taney, James Buchanan. They arrive at a construction site with pieces of wood and a machine to fit together and make an edifice. We cannot absolutely know, but we have to think that there has been pre-concert. It's impossible not to believe that they were together. So, there we have it. Abraham Lincoln, conspiracy theorist and paranoid, according to the modern view. And it doesn't stop there. The Republican Party in 1860 ran on a platform engineered by William Seward. It's called the Slave Power Conspiracy. The Republican Party was built on a conspiracy theory. So ultimately, you can choose your passion. You can go with Burke, Washington, Jefferson, Adams, Lincoln, and Seward. Go with Durkheim. Durkheim, of course, is the source of the Hofstadter neurodiversion of consensus, solidarity, inner enormousness, pipes, standard pipes, I guess, and the bush, and so forth. I think for some of this is a rather easy choice. Here's also the question of paranoia. Well, what's the comeback? It was not